Nia Carter had learned long ago that composure wasn't just a skill, it was survival. Years of navigating corporate spaces where she was often the only one had trained her to pick her battles. But as she settled into seat 14C, the one she had specifically chosen for its extra legroom, she felt something shift. The tension in the air was sharp, humming with an unspoken demand. A voice sliced through it, clipped and expectant. "Excuse me, but I need you to move. My son requires the aisle seat for his comfort." The woman standing beside her had the polished confidence of someone who was used to getting her way. Mid-40s, expensive-looking scarf knotted effortlessly at her neck, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against her designer purse. Beside her, a boy no older than 10 shifted awkwardly, his gaze fixed on his sneakers. Nia kept her voice even. "This is my assigned seat." The woman's expression barely wavered, as if she hadn't heard her at all. "I'm sure you can understand. As a mother, I need to prioritize my child's needs." There it was, the assumption, the expectation that she would simply comply, that her presence was secondary, her claim to this space negotiable. Nia exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "And I'm sure you can understand that I booked this seat weeks ago. I'm not moving." The woman's lips thinned, her eyes flicking over Nia's neatly pressed blazer, the laptop open on her tray table, the confidence in her posture. It wasn't just irritation. It was assessment, dismissal. "I'll get a flight attendant," she said, turning sharply. "They'll sort this out." Nia didn't react, instead focusing on the presentation on her screen, the irony not lost on her. A pitch on equity and workplace bias for a firm that prided itself on diversity. She felt the weight of a glance from across the aisle, an older man, watching silently, offering the kind of wordless recognition that came from understanding, but not intervening. The footsteps returned, purposeful, accompanied by a young flight attendant whose name tag read Alyssa. Her customer service smile was in place, but her gaze was sharp, scanning the situation. "Is there a problem?" Before Nia could respond, the woman jumped in. "Yes, this woman refuses to accommodate a child. My son has sensory sensitivities and we need the aisle seat." Alyssa nodded, tapping at her tablet. "Ma'am, can I have your name?" "Lauren Hastings." Chin lifted, voice edged with confidence. "We're in row 22, but we need to be here." "And you?" Alyssa turned to Nia. "Nia Carter, seat 14C. Nia held out her boarding pass as proof. The flight attendant barely glanced at it before nodding. "Ms. Carter is in her correct seat." "Ms. Hastings, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you and your son to return to your assigned seats." A flicker of disbelief flashed across Lauren's face. "Excuse me? If there was a special request, it should have been noted when you booked. Ms. Carter is under no obligation to move." The hush that had fallen over the cabin grew heavier, the kind that signaled an audience, strangers waiting to see how this would unfold. Lauren's jaw clenched. "I can't believe this. Prioritizing one person over a child's needs? Is this how your airline treats families?" Alyssa's voice remained unwavering. "All passengers are entitled to their assigned seats. If you'd like, I can help you find 2 seats together elsewhere. But Ms. Carter doesn't need to be involved in that solution." The shift was palpable. It wasn't just a denial of entitlement. It was a reminder that some boundaries were not up for negotiation. Lauren let out a breath, sharp and forced. "Fine. We'll remember this next time we book flights." She grabbed her son's hand and stormed toward the back. Alyssa turned to Nia, professionalism unwavering. "Apologies for the disturbance, Ms. Carter. Can I get you anything before takeoff?" "No, thank you," Nia replied, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I appreciate your help." Alyssa gave her a small nod. Everyone deserves to fly without being pressured. As the flight attendant walked away, Nia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She turned back to her screen, trying to refocus on her work, but the interaction lingered. Not because it was uncommon, but because of how it had ended. For once, someone in authority had actually backed her up. Just as she regained her focus, a voice from the aisle broke through her thoughts. "Excuse me." She glanced up to find a man, mid-30s, well-dressed but relaxed, sliding into the seat beside her. "Saw what happened. Handled yourself well." He extended a hand. "Jason Reed." Nia shook it, still slightly caught off guard. "Nia Carter. Not my first time dealing with something like this." Jason gave a knowing nod. "Yeah, I figured. Mind if I ask what you're working on?" She gestured toward her laptop. "Diversity and inclusion strategy. Pitching it to a client tomorrow." "No kidding. I'm in HR at Redwood Capital." We launched a similar initiative last quarter. And just like that, the tense encounter faded as they fell into an easy conversation about workplace equity and leadership. By the time the plane pushed back from the gate, Nia had not only a promising new connection, but the start of something unexpected. As the engines roared to life and the plane began taxiing, she caught a glimpse of Lauren Hastings several rows back, her expression still tight with irritation. Their eyes met for the briefest moment across the cabin, and then Nia turned away. She had spent enough energy on people like Lauren. She had nothing to prove. What Nia couldn't have known then, what she wouldn't realize until much later, was that this encounter was only the beginning. That the woman glaring at her from the back of the plane would play a much larger role in her life than a dispute over airplane seating. That justice had its own timing, and the universe had its own way of settling debts. By the time the plane leveled off at cruising altitude, Nia and Jason had uncovered even more in common. Both had grown up in Atlanta, both had attended HBCUs for undergrad, and both had navigated the often isolating experience of being the only one in professional spaces. "So what brings you to Chicago?" Jason asked, as the flight attendants moved through the cabin with drinks. "Client pitch, then heading to my mother's birthday dinner." "Nice. I'm here for a leadership conference, presenting on equity and performance reviews." Nia raised an eyebrow. "Now that's a topic I have plenty of first-hand experience with." Jason laughed, a genuine warm sound that caught the attention of a few nearby passengers. "Yeah, I bet. What's the worst one you've had?" "Oh, where do I start?" Nia said, accepting a coffee from the flight attendant with a quiet thank you. Nia Carter had dealt with microaggressions before. It came with the territory, being one of the only black women in executive spaces. But there was something about this particular flight, about the way Lauren Hastings had tried to push her out of her own seat, that made today's tension sit heavier. She took a slow sip of her coffee, willing the heat to loosen the tightness in her chest. Across the row, Jason Reed shook his head. "Let me guess. You were surprisingly articulate in your last performance review?" Nia let out a dry chuckle. "Close. So polished and well-spoken, like I was supposed to take that as a compliment." Jason winced. "Classic. A VP once told me, 'You're not like other black men.' Right in the middle of a leadership meeting. What did you do?" Jason smirked, asked her to explain what she meant, watched her squirm for 2 full minutes before she changed the subject. Before Nia could respond, Alyssa, the flight attendant, stopped by their row again. "Ms. Carter, I wanted to inform you." She hesitated, lowering her voice. "The woman from earlier filed a formal complaint against you with the senior flight attendant." Nia set her coffee down, heartbeat steady but heavy. "Against me? She claimed you were hostile and used inappropriate language." Jason let out a sharp breath. "You've got to be kidding me." Alyssa's jaw clenched slightly. "For what it's worth, I already told my colleague I witnessed the entire thing. Her claims are false." The tightness in Nia's chest coiled harder. This was the part that was always exhausting. Being unjustly accused. Being put in a position where she had to defend herself for simply existing. She exhaled slowly. "I appreciate you speaking up." Alyssa hesitated, glancing around as if weighing whether to say what was on her mind. Then, voice low, she added, "It happens more than you might think. Some people believe they can get what they want just by making accusations." She didn't have to say it outright. Nia knew exactly what she meant. As Alyssa moved on, Jason turned back to her, his expression serious. "You okay?" Nia sighed. "I'm just tired. Tired of the expectation that I have to be perfect, that I can't show frustration. Because the moment I do, I become exactly what they expect me to be." Jason nodded. "The emotional tax. It's relentless." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the engines filled the space between them. Then, Jason shifted, leaning slightly toward her. "Tell me about your pitch tomorrow. Maybe talking it through will take your mind off this nonsense." Grateful for the change in subject, Nia let herself refocus. She explained her framework. How most diversity initiatives focus too much on getting people in the door, and not enough on what happens once they're inside. Jason nodded. "Exactly. They pat themselves on the back for hiring a handful of people of color, but when those same employees leave within a year, they wonder why. Because they were never set up to succeed." Their conversation flowed easily. Two professionals exchanging insights, occasionally punctuated by shared frustration or moments of laughter. Time passed quickly. By the time the captain announced their descent into Chicago, the earlier confrontation felt distant, dulled by the warmth of an unexpected connection. Jason reached into his bag and pulled out a business card. I'd love to stay in touch. Maybe grab coffee while we're both in town. Nia took the card, the embossed lettering catching the cabin lights. Redwood Capital. I'd like that. My pitch is at 10, but I should be free by noon. Perfect. Text me when you're done. As they exchanged contact information, Nia reflected on the strange symmetry of the day. How a tense, frustrating encounter had led to something promising. Maybe there was a lesson in that. How adversity had a way of opening unexpected doors. The plane tilted slightly as they descended, the Chicago skyline sprawling beneath them, a grid of golden lights blinking against the early evening sky. Nia gathered her materials, carefully tucking her presentation into her leather portfolio. Jason smirked. You don't need it, but good luck tomorrow. Nia smiled, feeling a flicker of genuine anticipation. Thanks, and good luck with your session. As the wheels touched down, Nia inhaled deeply. This city had always been just another stop on her business travel list. But now, with her mother living here, and a new connection waiting for coffee, Chicago suddenly felt like a place where something significant might happen. She just didn't know yet whether that something would be good, or terrible, or maybe both. Nia Carter scanned the lakefront cafe as she stepped inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the hum of quiet conversations. Industrial decor, exposed brick, and far too many hipsters in asymmetrical haircuts. She spotted Jason Reed at a corner table, already nursing a latte in a large ceramic mug. Sorry I'm late, she said, settling into the chair across from him. Took longer than expected to grab a cab. Jason smirked. No worries, I've been entertained. This place is peak hipster central. One guy is literally sketching his coffee cup. Nia let out a soft laugh, the morning's tension slowly easing from her shoulders. Pretentious as hell, she agreed. But I hear the coffee is worth it. Jason raised his mug. Confirmed. Solid 9 out of 10. After placing her order, an Americano, no sugar, Nia filled Jason in on her meeting at Davenport Financial. His reaction was immediate. You're joking. The woman from the plane is their head of talent acquisition? That's a cosmic joke. Right? Nia sipped her coffee, shaking her head. And of course, she's a key decision-maker for my proposal. Jason leaned forward. How did she react when she saw you? Professional. On the surface. But there was recognition. And definitely not the good kind. Nia explained how Lauren Hastings had been silent through most of the meeting, her only contribution being a thinly veiled challenge to the proposal's feasibility. She waited until the end, then basically warned me that she has influence over the decision. Jason exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. You think she's going to try to block it out of spite? I hope not. That would be wildly unprofessional, Nia mused, twirling her coffee spoon absently. But people can be wildly unprofessional when their egos are involved. Jason nodded. That's an understatement. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, each contemplating the intersection of personal and professional politics that Nia now had to navigate. Then Jason leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. You know, this could actually work in your favor. Nia raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? Jason gestured with his mug. Think about it. If Lauren is the only one opposing your proposal, without valid business reasons, it exposes her bias. From what you told me, the other execs were on board. If she's the lone dissenting voice, that could actually make her look bad. Nia considered this. He had a point. Richard Davenport was especially interested in the innovation data, and the COO asked insightful questions. If Lauren keeps pushing back for no real reason, it might raise some red flags about her motives. Jason grinned. Exactly. And beyond that, your proposal is damn good. It stands on its own merit. Nia smiled. I appreciate that. She exhaled, rolling her shoulders as if physically shaking off the weight of the morning. I just hate that office politics might influence a decision that could actually benefit people. Jason smirked. Welcome to corporate America, where merit matters, but relationships and politics matter more. Their conversation shifted seamlessly to Jason's upcoming conference presentation on bias in performance evaluations. The problem, he explained, is that people equate good intentions with fair outcomes. They assume that because they're not consciously trying to discriminate, their biases don't affect their decisions. Nia nodded. The I don't see color fallacy. As if pretending not to notice differences magically creates equality. Exactly. Their discussion flowed effortlessly, transitioning between corporate challenges and personal experiences, punctuated by moments of shared humor. There was something refreshing about Jason's ability to dissect complex topics without arrogance. He was sharp, but easygoing. Intellectual, but not pretentious. So, Jason said, as they finished their coffee. What's next on your Chicago agenda? Nia glanced at the time. My mother's birthday dinner tonight. Then I have a free day before flying back Sunday. No plans for tomorrow? Not really. Maybe some shopping. My mom keeps telling me I need to invest in experiences, not just achievements. Jason chuckled. Smart woman. Want some company for those experiences? I finish at the conference by noon. The invitation hung between them, shifting the tone of their interaction ever so slightly, from professional networking to something more personal. Nia hesitated for a moment, weighing the potential complications against the undeniable ease of their connection. That sounds nice, she finally admitted. But fair warning, I haven't done the tourist thing in ages. I might be terrible at it. Jason grinned. Perfect. We can be terrible at it together. I suggest starting with the Art Institute. Pretentious enough to satisfy our professional credentials, but actually fun enough to count as a real experience. Nia laughed, the lightness in her chest a stark contrast to the tension she had carried earlier. The Art Institute it is. Just then, her phone buzzed. A call from Richard Davenport. She exchanged a look with Jason. I should take this. Jason nodded, watching her carefully as she answered. Miss Carter. Davenport's voice was smooth and professional. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all, Mr. Davenport. What can I do for you? I wanted to touch base about this morning's presentation. The team and I had a discussion after you left, and we were quite impressed with your framework. Nia's pulse quickened. I'm glad to hear that. In fact, Davenport continued, we'd like to move forward more quickly than initially planned. Our board has been pushing for concrete action, and your approach addresses several key concerns. Her grip on the phone tightened. This was happening. That's excellent news, Mr. Davenport. I appreciate the opportunity. Additionally, he added, we're hosting a charity gala tomorrow night at the Chicago Cultural Center. It's a fundraiser for educational programs. I'd like to formally invite you. It would be a great chance to meet our board members before finalizing details next week. A gala. Of course. I'd be honored, Nia replied smoothly, already rearranging her mental schedule. Wonderful. It's black tie. Begins at 7. Feel free to bring a guest. After a few pleasantries, the call ended. She looked up at Jason, who had been watching her expectantly. Good news? He asked. Very good news, she confirmed. Davenport wants to move forward, and I just got invited to their charity gala tomorrow night. Jason's face lit up. That's fantastic. And I assume Lauren Hastings will also be there? Undoubtedly. Jason smirked. Sounds like the perfect opportunity to remind her exactly who she's dealing with. Nia hesitated, then spoke before she could second-guess herself. Davenport mentioned I could bring a guest. Would you be interested? Jason didn't miss a beat. Are you kidding? I'd be honored. Besides, I clean up well in a tux. Nia chuckled. I don't doubt that. As they finalized plans for the gala, Nia couldn't ignore the shift in her Chicago trip. What had started as a routine business pitch had evolved into something far more complex. An unexpected rivalry. A major career opportunity. And now, possibly, something even more unexpected with Jason. But one thing was certain. Lauren Hastings wasn't done with her yet. And tomorrow night, at that gala, the real game would begin. As the afternoon sun cast a golden hue over Chicago's skyline, Amara took a deep breath, steadying herself for what was yet to unfold. Tonight's gala wasn't just an event. It was another battlefield in the quiet war of influence, power, and strategy. She had played her cards well so far, securing Richard Davenport's support, gaining allies like Julian Washington and Elizabeth Wells, and ensuring that Karen Whitfield's subtle resistance remained ineffective. But Amara knew better than to celebrate early. This game wasn't over yet. As she walked back to her hotel, her phone buzzed. Marcus. Looking forward to tonight. Fair warning. I can't dance to save my life. Amara smirked, shaking her head as she typed back. Amara. Noted. We'll stick to the edges of the dance floor. Also, interesting meeting with the COO. Lots to fill you in on. His reply came instantly. Marcus. Intrigued. Corporate intrigue over champagne? Sounds perfect. She chuckled, tucking her phone away. Despite the corporate chess match unfolding around her, there was something refreshing about having Marcus in her corner. Whatever the evening held, at least she wouldn't be facing it alone. The Chicago Cultural Center stood regal under the night sky, its grand architecture illuminated in soft golden light. As Amara and Marcus arrived, the buzz of high-powered executives, industry leaders, and polished philanthropists filled the air. Impressive venue, Marcus commented, offering her his arm. Amara took in the elegant crowd. Davenport doesn't do things halfway, that's for sure. Inside, the grand rotunda had been transformed into a dazzling event space, with elegantly set tables, a jazz quartet playing in the background, and a subtle undercurrent of corporate politics running through every conversation. Amara, so glad you could make it. Richard Davenport greeted them, holding a champagne flute. And you must be Marcus Green. They exchanged pleasantries before Richard gestured toward a group of board members. Julian Washington, our board's strongest voice for change, Richard introduced. Julian shook Amara's hand firmly, his Omega Sci-Fi cufflinks glinting under the chandelier light. It's about time Davenport brought in fresh perspective on this issue. That's the goal, Amara replied smoothly, recognizing an ally when she saw one. As the evening progressed, she navigated through conversations, introducing Marcus to key players, subtly securing support for her initiative. But she noticed Karen Whitfield lingering on the periphery, her calculating gaze scanning the room. She's avoiding you, Marcus observed quietly. Amara smirked. For now, but she won't stay silent forever. And she was right. As dessert was being served, Karen approached their table, her practiced smile firmly in place. Ms. Jackson? Enjoying your first Davenport Gala? Amara matched her expression, her tone just as polished. It's impressive. The educational program seems to be making a real difference. Karen's eyes flickered. Yes, we take long-term commitment seriously. Real impact requires more than just fashionable initiatives for corporate reports. The subtle jab landed, but Amara didn't flinch. I couldn't agree more, she replied smoothly. That's exactly why my framework prioritizes sustainable transformation, not just temporary optics. Marcus shifted beside her in quiet support. Karen's gaze flickered to him before she turned back to Amara. How fortunate that you had such a last-minute colleague available to accompany you. Before Amara could respond, Julian Washington cut in smoothly. Networking is the lifeblood of our industry, isn't it, Karen? Some of the most valuable professional connections happen unexpectedly. A subtle warning. Karen might play her games, but she wasn't the only power player in the room. Karen inclined her head slightly. Indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening. As she walked away, Judge Gloria Washington, Julian's wife, shook her head slightly. Some people can't help showing their hand, can they? I hope you're prepared for the resistance that's coming, Julian added. Amara smiled confidently. I am, and I'm fortunate to have allies who understand the importance of this work. As the jazz quartet struck up a smooth melody, Marcus extended his hand. Dance? Amara hesitated, but then placed her hand in his. Despite my warning about my skills, Marcus teased. I'll take my chances, she smirked. On the dimly lit dance floor, the tension of the evening melted into something softer. For the first time in a while, Amara let herself enjoy the moment. You've made some powerful allies tonight, Marcus murmured, and a determined adversary. Karen Whitfield? Amara glanced across the room where Karen was watching them. Marcus chuckled. She's not subtle. No, but that actually helps. Predictable enemies are easier to outmaneuver. As they swayed, Marcus tightened his hold slightly. You handled tonight brilliantly. And for the record, I'd love to see you again. Preferably without corporate espionage involved. Amara smiled, the warmth of the moment settling in. Maybe next time you're in Philadelphia. Or next time you're in Chicago, Marcus countered smoothly. Deal. Amara stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in her temporary office at Davenport Financial, watching the Chicago skyline glow against the twilight. 3 weeks into the implementation, things were progressing better than expected. Richard Davenport and Julian Washington had solidified their support, and Elizabeth Wells had been an invaluable ally, clearing bureaucratic obstacles. Karen Whitfield, however, had maintained polite resistance, attending meetings, providing data on delay, and subtly undermining where she could. But Amara was ready for her. As expected, Karen's assistant had already started pushing a narrative, questioning if Amara's framework was raising unrealistic expectations. Classic corporate resistance tactic. But Amara had anticipated this. When Elizabeth stopped by her office for a quick check-in, Amara laid out her next move. I'm considering inviting Karen to co-lead the mentorship program design. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. You're giving her a stake in the project? Yes. It aligns with her expertise, gives her a visible role, and makes it politically difficult for her to oppose the initiative outright. Elizabeth smirked. An elegant trap, Amara smiled knowingly. Let's see if she takes the bait. As Elizabeth left, Amara's phone buzzed. Marcus, just landed in Chicago. Any chance you're free for dinner tomorrow night? A surge of unexpected excitement flickered through her. She hadn't known he'd be in town. Amara, definitely. 7:30 at Maple and Ash. I'll make a reservation. His reply came instantly. Marcus, perfect, can't wait to see you. Amara tucked her phone away, looking out at the skyline. Sometimes the biggest victories came not just from winning battles, but from playing the long game. And this game was far from over. As